The World Cup kicks off in less than 2 weeks' time, so it's high time that we preview every single team so that you can be that know-it-all in your group and at least come away with one fun tidbit of information for each of the 32 nations. In this video, we're looking at groups A through D, and we'll have groups E through H out tomorrow. And no guys, this is not my predictions video. That's coming out early next week. Hello, I'm Adrian. Thanks for joining me for this video. And if you want more World Cup content, because we'll have a lot of it as we go through this Winter World Cup experience together, then be sure to subscribe and become a part of our community. And guys, something to keep in mind here. At the time of recording this, not all of the World Cup squads are out just yet. And given the condensed schedule, players are dropping like flies. Someone who may be healthy at the time of recording may be unhealthy by the time the video comes out. Finally, before we begin, a big thank you to OneFootball for sponsoring these World Cup group previews. And they have a very exciting new offering for you. OneFootball will bring its library of video content to the big screens for the first time. The OneFootball TV app is now available on Apple TV OS and Amazon Fire TV devices across the world, with Android TV, Samsung, and LG Smart TVs to follow before the end of this year. The entire ecosystem of OneFootball video content from the world's top clubs, leagues, and federations are available to watch now, alongside free and paid live matches, highlights, behind the scenes footage, and breaking news now on the big screen. Plus, if you're in the UK and Ireland, you can watch this weekend's Serie A match between Bologna and Sassuolo for free, among many other matches. Whether you're in the UK and Ireland or outside of it, there are matches for you to watch for free from OneFootball. So go check it out. Thanks again, OneFootball, and let's do this. In Group A, we of course have the host Qatar, the Netherlands, Ecuador, and the African champion Senegal. Let's start with the hosts. Qatar come into this as the champions of the 2019 Asian Cup, where they won on their home soil and were then invited to the 2021 Gold Cup as well. Playing in a group against Honduras, Panama, and Grenada, they finished in first. They beat El Salvador 3-2 in the quarterfinals and then lost to eventual champions, the United States, 1-0 in the semis. Their Catalan head coach, Felix Sanchez, has been in charge of Qatar since 2017, and winning the Asian Cup in 2019 can't be overlooked. El Moaz Ali was on fire in that tournament with 9 goals, finishing as top scorer, and he also finished as top scorer in the 2021 Gold Cup as well. Qatar, of course, didn't have a qualifying campaign that we can judge them on, but as the hosts of the tournament, you can expect them to be pretty tough. They have played 6 friendlies in 2022, winning against Bulgaria and Guatemala, drawing against Chile, Jamaica, and Slovenia, and losing 2-0 to Canada. Sanchez typically plays with a back 5 against tougher opposition, but will get a little more adventurous with an attacking 3-5-2 now and then. Now, for each team in this preview, we'll be linking up with the guys at We Global Football over on Twitter, as they prepared a thread of some fun facts for each team. Go and give them a follow. I'm sure their content will be incredible during the tournament if this thread was anything to go off of. And their fun fact for Qatar, they have lost 10 straight matches against top 40 opponents, scoring twice and conceding 24. Only Ecuador falls outside of that top 40 from this group. Well, and Qatar, of course, they're 50th. Senegal, kings of the continent of Africa, and boasting a team that is happy to absolutely grind it out with their opponents if they have to, as they did twice against Egypt. Once in the final of the African Cup of Nations, eventually beating them in a shootout, and once again in the African qualifying playoffs, once again beating them in a shootout. You know, the Laser Wars game? That one. The Lions of Teranga are coached by former player Aliou Cissé, and he typically plays them in a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 if he wants to get a little extra cover for that back line. Speaking of, how about some personnel to look out for Senegal? The obvious one, of course, is Sadio Mane, a world-class talent now of Bayern Munich, who unfortunately has a big question mark over whether he'll be healthy for this World Cup after sustaining a knee injury. But you can't forget about guys like Ismaila Sarr, a very tricky boy on the wing, Bamba Dieng of Marseille also. In the midfield, you can look to Idrissa Gueye, Cheikhou Kouyaté, Pape Gueye, who has been getting some looks at Marseille, and more. Behind them, of course, is Kalidou Koulibaly, hasn't played a ton of late at Chelsea, but is absolutely a leader on this team and their captain. Abdou Diallo of RB Leipzig, Ballo Torre of AC Milan, Papa Cissé, etc., etc. And in goal, expect Edouard Mendy to start. Really solid team that has plenty of experience in high pressure situations lately as champions of Africa and getting through that playoff against Egypt. We Global Football's fun fact, Senegal has only lost 2 matches in the past 3 years, and only Argentina has lost fewer in the field of 32 teams. Ecuador are a side that is carrying some nice hype about them, aren't they? Medium hype, I should say. Not being hyped to be tournament winners or anything of that sort of level, but based upon their qualification campaign, which saw them qualify ahead of the likes of Colombia, Chile, and Paraguay, there's reason to believe in this generation from LAKEY. Not El-Tree, LAKEY. We'll get to El-Tree later. Of course, for those who follow the Premier League, Moises Caicedo will be the most familiar name as he has excelled at Brighton, but Gustavo Alfaro's squad is packed with young talent. I mean, looking at their projected squad, there isn't a player over the age of 27 in the midfield. Their oldest defender is 29. Youth has been the way forward, as well as a solid defensive shape in their 4-2-3-1, as Ecuador had the 3rd best defense in qualifying behind Brazil and Argentina. This is their 4th World Cup, and let's check back in with We Global Football's fun fact. Ecuador has 5 consecutive clean sheets. This is the longest streak among all World Cup teams, tied with Japan. However, no team in the field has had a lower percentage of points over the past 3 years. And finally, a team everyone will be familiar with, the Netherlands, round out this group as the representative from Europe, and they will be the heavy favorites to top this thing. Under Louis van Gaal, the Netherlands have started to look dominant once again. They've started to live up to their potential or the previous reputation of being an incredibly strong side. Euro 2020 will be a sore spot as Frank de Boer stank it up as he always seems to. They crashed out against the Czech Republic in that tournament, losing 2-0. They recently topped their Nations League group ahead of Belgium, Poland, and Wales, which is not bad at all, not losing a single match along the way and averaging 2.33 goals per game. The last time Van Gaal managed the Netherlands in the World Cup, he led them to 3rd in 2014, and he currently has a 73% win rate, which is massive. He likes to play with either a 3-4-1-2 or a 4-3-3. They have a great talent in defense with players like Van Dijk, Timber, De Ligt, De Vrij, while they have a wealth of talent in the midfield as well, Frankie de Jong, Steven Berghuis, etc. And in the attack, Depay, Cody Gakpo, he's made a lot of noise recently. Netherlands are looking great, and a great fact from We Global Football, the Netherlands are undefeated in 15 matches, scoring 41 goals in that time frame. That's the 2nd longest undefeated streak among all World Cup teams, behind only Argentina. Group B sees England, USA, Iran, and Wales fight for supremacy. Perhaps this group will be closer than a lot of people think. Let's start with England. England will be the favorites, of course, on the basis of how talented they are on paper. Gareth Southgate has plenty of options for every position, with perhaps their backline being the one area of concern, maybe. When I look at England's squad, the midfield and attacking options are great, with a nice mix of youth and experience. In the middle, you have guys like Jude Bellingham, Mason Mount, Declan Rice, as well as older heads like Henderson to provide experience. In the attack, you have Saka, Foden, Kane, Rashford, Grealish, and at the back is where it gets maybe a little bit more worrisome for me. Mainly the center backs. Maguire, Dyer, Stones has actually been quite decent in the last couple of seasons, far less mistake prone than he used to be. Ben White will be a great addition should he make the squad. And the fullbacks, hey, they aren't bad either. Unlucky that Reece James won't be there though. What's worrying about England is their form coming into this because, as We Global Football points out, England has not won a match in 6 attempts. No team at the World Cup has a longer winless streak right now. All of those losses came from the UEFA Nations League, and while some fans will downplay that competition and say they don't care, it's not like England was out there trying to lose. 0 wins from 6 attempts, getting smashed at home against Hungary. Not a good look. Relegated to League B, but still the favorite for this group. A team that is talented, but questions to be asked of how Southgate sets them up, as he hasn't really found a settled 11 or shape. 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1. We'll see. Carlos Queiroz is back at the helm of Iran after he took a little detour to manage Colombia and Egypt for a while. While he was with Iran previously for 8 years, he had the team looking pretty damn good, and they come into this with quite the talented side, don't they? They topped their qualifying group ahead of South Korea, as Iran lost just once away to South Korea. Credit to the former manager Dragan Skocic, who overlooked that campaign. Queiroz came in September after Skocic was fired, which was curious from an outsider looking in, but according to my man Nima Tavali Ruzzari on Twitter, Skocic was sacked due to the squad not really rating him, and apparently he even had a public feud with Mehdi Taremi, which, that's only one of the biggest personalities on the team. Anyway, he's one of the names you'll recognize. Most of the names you'll recognize are probably in the attack, such as the aforementioned Mehdi Taremi, who has been absolutely brilliant for Porto the last couple of seasons, growing into a very well-rounded attacker at the ripe age of 30, even if he has some, let's say, balance issues. There's also Serdar Azmoun, who is looking like he will indeed win his injury race to be healthy for the World Cup, but there will be questions of his match fitness and form, of course. Moharami was also a regular for Dinamo Zagreb of late at right back, even starting all but one of their Champions League matches this season. On the other side of defense, Milad Mohammadi has become a regular for Ajax Athens as the season has rolled on. However, he didn't feature in either of Iran's recent friendlies against Uruguay and Senegal in September, where they actually beat Uruguay and drew Senegal. Senegal are not messing about, man. And neither are we global, as they point out that Iran has scored at least one goal in 8 consecutive matches against non-AFC competition. That bodes well for this group. Wales are a strange team. I find it hard to get a read on them. I don't know how to read them, as I don't mean to sound reductive of the entire team, but so much of their success tends to hinge upon Gareth Bale and how he becomes a super mutant when he pulls on that Wales kit. He could be chilling on the sidelines for Real Madrid or LAFC for months, only to pull that thing on and just play out of his skin. But that said, shout out to Rob Page for guiding Wales to their first World Cup since 1958. That's incredible for the country. They of course impressed at Euro 2016, where the entire team made it all the way to the semis. It was a team effort then, claiming the scalps of the likes of Belgium along the way, and they will absolutely have to try to find some form resembling such if they want to make it out of this very difficult group. Very competitive group. There are some questions over how the side will look, but one thing is certain, Bale and Ramsey are coming in healthy. Ampadu is playing regularly for Spezia. Rodin is doing the same for Rennes, or at least he was prior to his suspension. Daniel James and Harry Wilson are starting to get into Marco Silva's team at Fulham. You can expect Wales to be a tough team, and they already went through the stress of the playoffs, so they're ready mentally, you would expect. Luckily, they won't be facing too many teams from the FIFA Top 10 rankings, because as We Global Football point out, since defeating Belgium at Euro 2016, Wales is winless in 15 consecutive matches against top 10 opposition. And finally, the United States, who play Wales on the opening day. They actually come into this tournament as one of the top sides when you look strictly at results. And that will have US men's national team fans scratching their heads a little bit. Greg Berhalter's boys, according to We Global Football, have won 27 matches over the last 3 years, which is more than any other country, not just in this World Cup, but in the world over in the last 3 years. All those Gold Cups and Nation Leagues, I guess, they add to that tally. Still, that's very impressive. But the reasons why I say US men's national team fans will be scratching their heads a little bit is because the Berhalter era, while they have won tournaments and managed to qualify for the World Cup for the first time since 2014, has been filled with a feeling of underachieving, underwhelming. Why? Because while the quality of the players has increased for the USA with players competing at bigger and bigger clubs in Europe, they still stumbled through their qualification by their own standards. And even if the results have been good, the actual product on the pitch has again felt underwhelming, like they are capable of so much more. One huge issue for them is their inability to win matches outside of the USA. They cross the border and they're not very good, as that has extended to their recent friendlies as well, losing 2-0 to Japan and drawing 0-0 with Saudi Arabia. The fellas haven't scored a goal in their last 3 matches. That being said, they're kind of a team where if the likes of Gio Reyna of Dortmund, Weston McKennie of Juve, Christian Pulisic of Chelsea, Brendan Aronson and Tyler Adams of Leeds, if guys like that are healthy and play to their potential, the US can be a scary team going forward. I worry about their back line, but we'll see what happens. In Group C, we have our first major contender for the World Cup. By major, I mean a top 3 candidate, probably, as Argentina will go up against Mexico, Poland, and Saudi Arabia. Let's talk about that candidate, Saudi Arabia. I'm sorry, that's a rude joke. But as for Saudi Arabia, that's the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia officially. They're competing in their 6th World Cup and their 2nd consecutive qualification, my man. They will need to pull out all of the stops in order to equal their best ever finish at the World Cup, which was making it to the round of 16 back in that 1994 World Cup. They're coached by Hervé Renard, a man you may remember having previously coached teams like the Ivory Coast and Morocco as recently as the 2018 World Cup. And Mr. Renard, aka Mr. Fox, likes his team to play a tight defensive game and really snuff out their opponents if they can. Because for what they lack in glitz and glam, they make up for in togetherness. The entirety of the squad plays in the domestic league in Saudi Arabia, and that famed defense becomes a monolith, oftentimes at the expense of the attack as well. As We Global Football has pointed out, there has been a total of 7 goals scored in the past 9 matches that Saudi Arabia have taken part in. Don't expect a high-scoring affair when this team's involved. And if you are Polish, I'm sure you come into this tournament maybe lacking in a bit of optimism, as the last 3 World Cups that Poland have qualified for, 2002, 2006, and 2018, all ended with a group stage exit. With Argentina nailed on as the favorite for the group, Poland will likely be competing with Mexico for 2nd place. That's the expectation, at least. When you have someone like Robert Lewandowski in your ranks, truly world class, someone who can turn a match on its head with one finish, anything is possible so long as you defend well, right? With Tek Szczesny in goal, you always have a chance, but I don't love what I see in defense. Bednarek is probably the standout, but he hasn't exactly been a starter for Villa, playing just 340 minutes so far this season. Then in the midfield and the attack, that's when Michnovic's side starts to come alive for me. Zalewski of Roma, we'll see if he's utilized as a left wing back, as Poland have indeed started playing with a back 3 of late, though a back 4 was utilized in their qualification playoff win over Sweden. Singular, of course, as Russia was booted out of the playoffs back in March. Then there's Zielinski, Arek Milik, who has been quite decent for Juve, Kaminski, etc. I feel like Poland is a bit unbalanced, great in the attack, but relying on guys like Kamil Glik and Bednarek in defense. We'll see how it goes. We Global Football points out how Poland is winless in their previous 19 matches against top 15 opposition. Argentina is definitely top 15, as is Mexico. Mexico is a nation that holds such high standards for their national team. The expectation is always so high for them, and they deliver for the most part at the World Cup. The last time that Mexico failed to make it out of the group stage at the World Cup, all the way back in 1978, dude. But the duality of that is since 1994, they have failed to make it past the round of 16, causing Mexicans to believe they are cursed, that they suffer from the curse of the quinto partido, the 5th game, as the 5th game is of course the quarterfinals. 7 tournaments, 7 consecutive round of 16 exits. At times it felt like Mexico were underachieving in CONCACAF qualifying, as for a while they were behind the leaders Canada and the United States as well, but as things took shape, they ended up on equal points to Canada in 2nd place, but with a far inferior goal difference. One thing that was a bit worrying for Mexico, however, was that they were incapable of beating both Canada and the USA, drawing and losing once each against both sides. So when they came up against tough opposition, they couldn't get the job done. That doesn't bode well for a World Cup. In fact, as We Global Football points out, Mexico is winless in their last 10 matches against teams in FIFA's top 30. But it's not for a lack of talent, as when you have one of the best defensive midfielders in CONCACAF in Ajax's Edson Alvarez, Napoli's in-form attacker Chucky Lozano, Raul Jimenez, and many others playing in both Europe and domestically, you're going to boast a great squad. It's just a question of whether Tata Martino can get them to perform against both Argentina and Poland, teams that will give them a very difficult time. Speaking of Argentina, I mean, what can you say about them? After Sampaoli's disaster at the 2018 World Cup, Lionel Scaloni was brought in to play Scalonetta ball. And has he ever had some success, man? Granted, Argentina is one of those countries that will always have a broad talent pool to pull from. They seem to be especially blessed at the moment, both in the attack and the midfield. Shout out Enzo Fernandez. While the defense isn't so shabby either, is it? Who knows? But they're in good hands. Emi Martinez in goal, Rulli as a backup, or Armani. My God, there is so much talent in this side. And while we will go over their attackers in a second, the lengths that Scaloni has taken them in improving their defense is remarkable, as clean sheets have become the norm for Argentina, such as when they blanked Italy 3-0 in the Cup of Champions, you know, the cup you get to play in. If you win Copa America, as they had done last year, that was huge. As We Global Football points out, Argentina is undefeated in their last 35 matches, where they have scored 70 goals and conceded just 17. Let that sink in. And damn it, Elon Musk has ruined that turn of phrase forever, hasn't he? But honestly, let that sink in. Messi is also in great shape and form going into this World Cup, looking likely to play alongside Lautaro Martinez, I would think, though the form of Julian Alvarez of late will give Scaloni something to think about for sure, amongst his many other options. Argentina are a bona fide World Cup contender. We'll see if they can pull it all together and do one better than 2014. France and Denmark, very familiar foes, will share Group D with Australia and Tunisia. Tunisia is a team that I haven't followed very closely since the 2018 World Cup, but in looking at their results, they are stingy as hell, man. They conceded 2 goals in 6 matches in the second round of qualifying, only to go on and beat Mali 1-0 across 2 legs, with an own goal being the goal that got them to the World Cup. Looking at their friendlies this year, 2-0 win over Chile, 3-0 win over Japan, a 1-0 win over Comoros, and then a 5-1 loss to Brazil. But hey, man, I mean, it's Brazil. But hey, it's worth noting that prior to that match against Brazil, the one goal that they had conceded against Burkina Faso back in AFCON was the only goal that they had conceded under their head coach, Jalel Kadri. As We Global Football points out, in their last 27 matches, both teams have scored just 4 times when Tunisia is involved. They seem to favor a 4-3-3, a very defensive 4-3-3, with Elias Skiri of Köln playing at the base of that midfield 3. If they can sit tight defensively, they're clearly a team that could frustrate France and Denmark and maybe even steal a point, with their main target being Australia, of course. The Socceroos are heading to Qatar for their 5th World Cup in a row, knowing that things will be very difficult in Group D. In fact, just getting to the World Cup was very difficult for this Australian side, who won just 4 matches out of 10 in Group B qualifying in Asia, finishing 7 and 8 points behind Japan and Saudi Arabia respectively. In Asia, the 2 third-place teams face off in a playoff, so Australia took on UAE and won 2-1 at the Ahmad bin Ali Stadium in Qatar, but you gotta win that playoff to play in an interconfederation playoff against the 5th best team from CONMEBOL, and Australia beat Peru in a shootout. Dramatic as hell. The antics from the substitute keeper Andrew Redmayne were incredible. What a legend. Speaking of keeping and in turn defending, that's where Australia has done pretty well, as We Global Football points out that they haven't conceded more than 2 goals in their last 39 matches, which is an impressive feat. Gone are the days of Australia boasting talent that is playing in the Premier League, for example. But there are a couple of names you may recognize, such as Hrustic of Hellas Verona, for any of you Serie A enjoyers. On top of that, Aaron Moy, and it seems like a ton of their talent plies their trade in the Scottish Premiership. Hard to say how Australia will do under manager Graham Arnold, but I guess we'll see, right? As far as the world is concerned, there aren't many nations on this planet that have a depth pool as deep as France does. But France is another team that struggled a bit during the most recent edition of the UEFA Nations League. After previously winning that damn thing, France finished 3rd in a group consisting of themselves, Austria, Croatia, and Denmark, where they did indeed lose twice to their World Cup Group D combatants, Denmark. In fact, as We Global Football has highlighted, since France's 1-loss in 33-match run that ended in March 2022, they have won just 1 game in 6 attempts. But still, Deschamps is one of the luckiest men alive when it comes to having the pick of the litter, or perhaps one of the most unlucky with the hard choices he would have to make. But, I mean, tell that to the manager of, pretty much any team in the world who would love to have to choose between Saliba, Upamecano, Koundé, or Varane at center back, you know? Of course, assuming all will be injury-free. And he basically has that problem, or blessing, in every position, where for the manager of France, it's not a question of talent, but more a question of whether you can get all the correct pieces into place and firing. Like in the attack, how do you organize that and who do you choose? Mbappe, Benzema, Griezmann, Nkunku, Dembele, hell, even Giroud has been scoring goals at a regular rate again for Milan. And we all know how 2018 went with Olivier Giroud leading the line. The midfield is also blessed, though the absence of N'Golo Kante, who was vital to their success last time, has kind of been an issue for France since that 2018 World Cup, hasn't it? They haven't looked the same. Deschamps also can't seem to make up his mind between his tried and tested 4-3-3 or his new obsession, the 3-4-1-2. A man who absolutely has a coherent idea of how he wants his side to play is Kasper Hjulmand of Denmark. My goodness, Denmark are very, very fun to watch, aren't they? They played some truly lovely football at Euro 2020 after going through that harrowing experience of losing their captain Christian Eriksen for the tournament. And I think everyone has a soft spot for them now. And since then, they've built upon what they achieved at Euro 2020, a semi-finals finish, you'll remember, as they finished just 1 point behind Croatia in their Nations League group, and in qualifying, they won their first 8 matches consecutively without conceding a single goal, which is insane. They didn't lose a match until their final game against Scotland, when they were well and truly qualified already. Not only have they continued to play well as a team, but their players are excelling all over Europe in top leagues. La Liga players in Dolberg, Braithwaite, Delaney, and Christensen. Premier League players like Eriksen, who is back, Damsgaard, Jensen, Højbjerg, and Andersen. The Serie A contingent like Kjær and Mæhle, and on it goes. Denmark are a great team. You need to watch Denmark because you're going to get an entertaining match. How do I know? Well, as We Global Football put it, Denmark has not drawn in their last 22 matches, the longest streak amongst teams in this tournament. They've won 15 and lost 7 of their previous 22. And that, my friends, concludes the previews for groups A through D. I already can't wait to get the second half of this World Cup preview series out to you, as we have a lot of fun coming your way, don't we? Germany, Spain, Japan, Brazil, Serbia, Canada, Croatia, Portugal, Uruguay, and more, all in the next video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, then I'll be coming over to give you a kiss soon. I'm Adrian, and enjoy the tournament. Ciao.